So, we talked in the last video about aperture priority and how you would use that when you want to prioritize depth of field over everything else. Now, the other semi-automatic mode that you need to know about is shutter priority. Now, shutter priority is what you would select if you are happy to let the camera control depth of field, because all you want to control is the shutter speed. Either because you wanted a long exposure or you needed to control movement blur, either to create it or to eliminate it. When you choose shutter priority, you choose the shutter speed, how long the shutter is open for. The camera will choose the aperture. The possible risk is that the camera chooses an aperture that is too shallow for the subject you are shooting, and you end up with a blurred image. Blurred not because the focus was missed, but because the depth of field wasn't deep enough. So that is shutter priority. It can be extremely useful if you're shooting sports, because with all the semi-automatic modes, the purpose is that the camera will use its metering system to ensure that the brightness of the image, the exposure, going back to the very first lesson, is maintained. So it allows you to create a consistent quality of images regardless of the lighting conditions. Now, if you're indoors using artificial light and the lights aren't going to change, you would never use shutter priority. There is absolutely no need. But if you were shooting a sport, for example, and the clouds were coming over, clearing, shutter priority could be very useful, because you know that the main priority for you is movement blur. You're probably so far away from the subject that even if the lens goes completely wide open to a shallow depth of field, you'll probably still have good enough depth of field. And equally, if it becomes very bright and the camera needs to shut things down a little bit, it'll work that way as well. It won't affect the quality of your images. Now, again, with shutter priority, you can use it with a fixed ISO, which I would strongly recommend, particularly when you're starting out, or you can use it with an auto ISO. Now, the risk with auto ISO, of course, is that the ISO goes so high that the images become so grainy or so noisy that you no longer consider them of acceptable quality. So for that reason, I would strongly suggest you start off using an ISO that is fixed. If you need to increase it, honestly, it sounds like a lot, but going from ISO 100 to ISO 200 or 400 is not as much as you think it is.